Hello, it's Crud here with a breakdown for Axes, a weapon type that has a surprising amount of moveset variety and usable passives for how neglected the weapon type is. So let's discover the potential of Axes together, starting with the different movesets. This is the regular light attack chain of Axes. This is the light attack chain of the hatchet type axes, which are the Hand Axe, Forked Hatchet, and Icerind Hatchet. This light attack chain is faster than a normal light attack chain. The Warped Axe and the Ripple Blade also have a different light attack chain, starting from the second light attack of the chain. The second hit of the heavy and charged heavy attack of the Warped Axe and Ripple Blade are also different. The charged version does 2 hits on the second hit. This is the normal heavy and charged heavy attack of the axes. As for cleavers, Iron Cleaver and Celebrant's Cleaver, they also have a light attack chain of their own. In addition to their light attack chains, they also have a different heavy and charged heavy attack. This is the heavy and charged heavy attack of the Iron Cleaver and Celebrant's Cleaver. They also have a different backstep heavy attack as well. This is the normal backstep heavy attack of the axes, and this is the backstep heavy attack of the cleavers. Like the heavy attacks, it has an extra running animation. And these are the ranges for the axes. Next, let us take a look at the attack rating of the axes and draw some conclusions, starting with the unique axes. The Rosus Axe has a unique weapon art, Rosus Summons, which is kind of like the spell TBS Summons, except its range is even shorter. It only hits in front of you, rather than tracking the target. To put it simply, this skill is amazingly bad. Even if your target is positioned right in front of you, doesn't move at all, and takes all 3 hits, it isn't a whole lot of damage. You can easily do better with many other options. One good point of this axe is that this axe's weapon art scales off its AR, so you can maximize its weapon art damage while maximizing its AR. It is also the longest axe, and its AR isn't that bad when you maximize it. However, even if you min-max it, this axe is still garbage. The final verdict for me is still, you're better off using something else. The Icerind Hatchet is actually a really crap weapon. It has a damage bonus on dragons, but meh. People did use this for speedruns. I don't know if people still use it anymore, but the main reason for speedruns is that it is easy to obtain and upgrade it with somber smithing stones. However, the weapon itself is actually really poor for everything else. Since the Hoarfrost Stomp on this weapon is the same as the infusible version, you can get higher damage on a regular cold infused axe with the Ash of War, and also get higher frostbite buildup. This is because this axe does not scale to intelligence at all, and part of Hoarfrost scaling is with intelligence. You can see it compared to the Hand Axe, which shares the exact same moveset using the stat distribution that actually favors the Icerind Hatchet. So yes, for optimization, this weapon is crap. The Stormhawk Axe has a unique Ash of War, Thunderstorm. For people who PvP, especially the ones that hard swap, you will know that catching someone with this weapon art deals hefty damage. Personally, it reminds me of Black Flame Tornado, which is a faith-scaling infusible Ash of War. If you're caught by either of these, you take a huge chunk of damage if you're not already dead. Its actual AR is alright with a quality spread, but there are components to its Ash of War that makes it scale better to dexterity, so feel free to run this weapon as a dex build weapon art stick. The Ripple Blade cannot be infused with other Ashes of War, but can be buffed by spells or consumables. This combined with the fact that it's a S-scaling in Arcane means that it works really well with the status greases. If you're running this at level 125 or higher, I doubt that you'll have less than 60 Arcane, so these are numbers for 60 and 80 Arcane for the status greases on the Ripple Blade. The Sleep Grease is a strong option, and one of the few ways you can inflict the sleep status effect. The Poison Grease also provides a ton of poison buildup, making it very easy for you to inflict the poison status effect. However, you can't poison an already poisoned target again, so it's just alright. Blood Grease gives much less bleed buildup compared to poison buildup versus the poison and blood infusions, but it is still quite high. One thing to note is, compared to the Ripple Halberd, the Ripple Blade actually scales a tad bit better, so it will have a slightly higher status buildup per hit. However, unless you really want to run the axe, the Ripple Halberd is a stronger weapon overall, with its base moveset for being a halberd, with longer reach to make it easier to apply status effects. Moving on to the regular axes, we have the Forked Hatchet, Hand Axe, Battle Axe, Highland Axe, which is the only axe with 110 critical, which I don't think makes a lot of difference, as axes don't have a particularly good MV for critical damage. The main selling point of this axe is that it buffs roar attacks by 7.5%, and yes, it stacks with the roar medallion. Celebrant's Cleaver, which grants 10 runes on hit, Jawbone Axe, Sacrificial Axe, which restores 4 FP per enemy death as long as you have this weapon held, Iron Cleaver, and Warped Axe. First, let us start with the Heavy Infusion, which axes in general scale better to than Keen. This first page has the Hatchet moveset and the Cleaver moveset, with their weights ordered as well. The Celebrant's Cleaver is very obviously just for the rune gain gimmick. It's not a good option for optimizing damage. It is also shorter than the Iron Cleaver. As for the Forked Hatchet, despite the fact that it has base bleed, I don't think this is a great option at all because of the amount of AR you're actually dropping. Furthermore, it is also the shortest axe. If you want bleed, going for blood infusions, which I will cover later, will be better for this. And if you're running blood infusion, a weapon with base bleed loses its advantage of having bleed. As for the next page of Heavy Infusion, we have the axes with regular movesets, the axe with the passives, and the Warped Axe. I've also sorted them by weight, and one thing you'll realize is that the two axes with passives have exactly the same weight as a regular counterpart. However, their AR is slightly lower, which makes sense, since they have a bonus in the form of a passive. I definitely suggest the axes with passives more than the regular ones though, as these are some pretty good passives, certainly worth a few points of AR when you do utilize them. These are their AR at the 80 strength mark. Even if we do account for the Warped Axe's greater weight in the stat investment, it definitely has a very high AR with its S-scaling in strength, while being one of the longer infusible axes. These are their AR for the Fire Infusion. Nothing to write home about. In fact, axes like the Warped Axe clearly suffer from Fire Infusion versus just running the Heavy Infusion. Next comes Keen Infusion. The Forked Hatchet is the only one that actually scales better to Keen. The Hand Axe is about equal on both Heavy or Keen. Especially with axes usually having higher strength requirements, I definitely suggest Heavy over Keen, but here are their numbers nonetheless. The same thing can be said for Lightning Infusion, although Lightning is a stronger element than Fire in PvP, as players have lower Lightning defense by default. Quality is as bad as usual for meta PvP levels. The amount of AR you're getting for your stat investment is just not worth it. This is mostly an infusion when your level is really high for enough strength and dexterity investment. Flame and Sacred is just a decision between the elements. They have the same amount of AR at max weapon upgrade. The most notable axe here is definitely the Sacrificial Axe. Not only does it suddenly have the highest AR amongst the axes, it also retains its passive, which generates 4 FP per enemy death. This is extremely helpful, especially if you're offhanding a seal for incantations. Magic is like the intelligence version of Flame and Sacred. While the Sacrificial Axe no longer has the highest AR amongst the axes, it is definitely a caster's best friend when it comes to FP sustain. There isn't much of a reason to select an axe for an intelligence build otherwise. As for cold infusion, I split them by stat distribution instead to maximize their damage. One thing you might have realized is that for some odd reason, the Warped Axe has more cold status buildup than the other axes. Yeah, why is that the case? These are the base status buildups for a normal axe. The Warped Axe miraculously has higher status buildup across the board. In fact, it has the same status buildup of great axes rather than normal axes. It seems like for one reason or another, the Warped Axe was either going to be the heaviest axe or the lightest great axe. It ended up as the heaviest axe, but kept the great axe's scaling. This is indeed further reflected in its poison and blood infusions as well, giving it not only the highest status buildup, but also an A scaling in strength, which also means that it has a relatively high AR, even on the status infusions. As for the Occult infusion, this infusion is usually only good on weapons with a base status effect that scales to arcane, like Bleed. However, I don't suggest this infusion at all, even for the Forked Hatchet, especially because the Warped Axe exists. If we take a look at the Occult Forked Hatchet versus the Blood Warped Axe, not only does the Warped Axe win by a huge margin for blood buildup, it also has a higher AR. If you really want to use the Forked Hatchet, sure, this is an okay infusion, but I would just not use the Forked Hatchet. Alright, let's do a quick summary. Icerind Hatchet is just for the speedrun Hoarfrost on Somber Stones if they still use it. For optimization, this axe sucks. Rosus Axe has a crap weapon art, and the Stormhawk Axe has a situationally powerful Ash of War, making it good for hard swaps and tight spaces. The Ripple Blade is best used with status greases, especially the Sleep one for PvP, but the Ripple Halberd will outperform this weapon in most cases. For the Light Axe moveset, is the faster light attack really worth the great loss in AR in such a short range? I would say no. The Celebrant's Cleaver is just a weaker Iron Cleaver, except it gives runes. If you like the different movesets of the Iron Cleaver, it is actually not a bad weapon, and has decent stats across most infusions. For the regular axes, the ones without passives are quite weak. I would just use the Warped Axe. The Highland Axe's main selling point is its passive of 7.5% roar damage bonus. The Sacrificial Axe works wonders with Flame, Sacred, or Magic infusion due to its high AR on those infusions, and its passive, which helps you with FP sustain in PvE. And the Warped Axe has great scaling on heavy infusions or any of the status infusions due to its great axe-like scaling rather than axe-like scaling, making it a hard choice to pass over unless you're going for one of the passives or the Stormhawk Axe's unique weapon art. Like and subscribe, and if you want to support the channel, consider buying my fantasy novel, which will also allow you to request or expedite a topic of your choice. See you next time.